Good morning. It's November 15th at 9:31 a.m. We are at the Nevada State Business Center, 3300 West Sahara, Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is the regular. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Nevada Taxicab Authority Board. I will call us to order. The record should reflect that present are members Decker, Graff, Vice Chairman Soderberg, myself, Dan Reeser, as chair, and Member Trujillo is excused for illness today. Member Soderberg, would you lead us to the pledge of allegiance?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Based on the materials provided to me, it appears that the meeting has been properly noticed in compliance with the open meeting law. Am I correct? Our first item of business, agenda item 2, is public comment. This matter is set forth on our agenda for members of the public who wish to address the board on matters within its jurisdiction. We may not take any action on those actions on the matters brought to our attention, but we welcome input from the public. Are there any members of the public that would wish for the board that would wish to address us? Seeing no members of the public, I know Member Decker wishes to address us.
Thank you. I'd just like to use this opportunity to welcome Sergeant Scott back. I'm extremely happy to see you back here. And to recognize all of the Taxicab Authority employees that are here as well. It's nice to see your faces. Welcome back. I'm glad to see you.
And I will bring to the public's attention one additional matter. Administrator Armstrong has departed from the agency, and Deputy Administrator Park is acting administrator for the time, so we'll cut him some slack today, but not after today. Is there any member of the public participating remotely who wishes to address us?
No.
Seeing none, I will close our first public comment session. That brings us to item 3, which is approval of the board meeting minutes of October 18th, 2023. Are there any comments, changes, or corrections that any board members have to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion.
Move to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2023.
Have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Vice Chairman Soder, second by Member Graff. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Brings us to agenda item 4, which is industry discussion. This matter is set forth on our agenda for members of the industry who are present to make comment, questions, raising concerns, or other matters should be brought to the board or staff's attention. Are there any members of the public at present who would wish to address us? Mr. Balaban.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want,
State your name.
George Balaban, Desert Cab Company.
Thank you.
We had livery operators had a universal dispatch meeting yesterday, and Captain was present. And we were updated from them that everything is all set for the F1 special event charge that will go into effect at noon today. So they've tested it, and it appears everything's going to set it up to go on at noon and go off noon on Monday. And obviously we'll know at 12:01, but we believe that it's all set up. So we just wanted to let you know that.
Great. Well, I will observe that in my cab on Monday evening, the signage was correctly posted in my cab. So
Good. Okay.
There wasn't a desert cat. Any other members of the public wish to address us? Sorry, members of the industry. Hearing none, we'll close agenda item 5, takes us to agenda item 5. Agenda item 4 takes us to agenda item 5, which is staff report. Acting administrator. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, a couple of things have happened. Director of B&I, Terry Reynolds, recently retired. I just want to congratulate him on that retirement. I look forward to those days myself. We have gotten a new director, Chris Sanchez, Dr. Chris Sanchez, and he's going to be in the Las Vegas office. So Director Reynolds was up in Reno. It'll be nice to have a director that's down here in Las Vegas now. Mr. Balaban brought up F1. The TA, I feel, is ready for that. We got some overtime approved to put 3 investigators out at the airport during the event. Actually, not during the event. It's during the period of time people coming into town. So starting today, up through, I believe it's Friday, when people are coming into town, the airport really needed some help keeping the cabs moving. And so I've got 3 of our investigators pretty much all day and into the night working overtime hours out there. But I'll also have a crew that'll be our regular crew working for calls and things like that too. So we'll see how that works. It's our first year trying the F1 thing, and we'll see how it works. And hopefully we'll make some adjustments as needed for next year's event. I want to thank Commissioner David Gruber from the NTA and Administrative Judge Cara Brown. They have really stepped up for our agency. We right now are without an administrative attorney or legal secretary, so we're really struggling with that part. And both of them have stepped up. They're taking care of hearings for us. They are also, Cara has looked over some legal documents for us on leases and things like that to try to help us out and keep everything running smoothly. So I just want to thank them for that. Just kind of update a little bit on the recruitments. Obviously, we have the administrative attorney and the legal secretary that I mentioned. The RTFs are available, so it's out there accepting applications, and we're in the process on those positions. Would love to have any input from you guys. If you guys know of any attorneys, any legal secretaries or management analysts too that would love to apply for us, I would love to get as many as we can. It's a good problem to have too many applications, I think. Also looking for a couple of administrative analysts. Our A2 positions, I think we have 4 people in background right now, 2 dispatchers and 2 administrative assistants. So hopefully we can get some people hired quickly on that. I know last time I was here, we talked about the 4 new positions you were very interested in. And it's a slower process than what I think was portrayed before. We won't have them hired by December. It's probably going to be more springtime before we get the 4 new positions, but we are in the process. I'm working with fiscal on it right now and the director's office to get the new positions in place, but it's going to take a little longer than what I think we could do before. So impounds. We did not have an administrative attorney or a legal secretary for a while, so our impounds had fallen basically to nothing. And I'm going to have Curtis go over our stats here in a minute. I turned these guys loose once we got it set up with Judge Brown and Mr. Gruber, Commissioner Gruber, to listen to hearings. And I know it won't reflect in these stats, but just in the last week, we've had 3 impounds that you guys will see in the next. So we're rolling with the impounds again, and hopefully that's just going to continue on. I don't know how many we'll get this week with F1. It's going to be kind of a tough deal, but want to give you an update on our radios. When I came over to the TA, I found out that there had been at least 3 different estimates for 3 different systems for 3 different items. And it was just a mess. So Curtis Mel and I met with our IT people, and we kind of just started at base level again. And as of yesterday, we gave everything we need to L3 Harris, who is the vendor, and they're putting together a quote for us. I talked with the director's office. They're ready to sign off on it as soon as we can get everything back. And as long as everything's in the right parameters, we'll get that. And I'm hoping by Super Bowl, we'll have a new radio system, base station, recording station, and portable radios for all the guys. And it's going to be this exact radio. It's the one that DPS carries. Originally, they were looking at a different radio, but I just don't see any reason to do something different than what we know works. So that's what we're going with. Wanted to talk a little bit. I've been contacted by the airport, and there's certain times, and I don't have the times and dates right now, but there's times when people are standing around waiting for cabs, and cabs aren't just prepared for whatever reason, whether it's the construction, everything that's going on in town, or what. But they'll send me pictures of people that are waiting to get cabs, and I've asked them to kind of try to document that more, give me dates, times, pictures, so I can bring it to you guys and we can talk to the industry and try to help that situation out, whatever we can do to help that out. I'd really like to see that. I know right now we have 3,500 medallions, but there's only 2,800 cabs out there. And I know that that number is increasing, but we're not there yet. So I think, you know, with F1 this week and then the Super Bowl, I think it'll kind of gel a little bit better after all of these events are over. But it's been an uphill battle for a lot of people right now.
I will just make one observation. That issue has been brought to my attention through the governor's office to the director. So apparently it's filtered from the airport authority to the Capitol. And so we do need to pay attention to what's happening.
I think the last thing that I'm just briefly going to talk about, my very first meeting last month, the surge charge was passed, and like Mr. Balaban said, it starts today. We have some things in place to track that. So in our next meeting, we should be able to give you some updates on how well that worked, if it worked, if it didn't work, you know, and just all of those parameters. So I know that you guys would like to have presentations about what our office does. I've asked one of my sergeants to bring a presentation today for the enforcement side. I'm going to let him give that here in just a minute, but I'd like to just turn this over to Curtis for a minute and have him give the stats for this past week, and then I can answer any questions, or hopefully answer any questions.
So before we move to Curtis's presentation, are there any questions?
One question. The base unit, first of all, you said you were going with the 185s.
Yes.
That's a good move because then it's a little more interchangeable with other agencies. Does the base station allow your dispatch to continue to operate as dispatch?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're looking at antennas. We want to make sure that we have the right antenna for the right base station. Again, the base station is going to have a recording portion to it. And now we're trying to get some mics and foot pedals for them as well. So.
Thank you. That's it.
No.
Good morning. For the record, I am Curtis Mel, Management Analyst for Taxicab Authority, and I have been given the honor to go over the stats.
Delegation.
All right, you guys all have copies of everything. You can see in the last month for October that our trips are down compared to October of 22 by almost 7%. The revenue overall per trip, though, is up 12%. Sure, it has a lot to do with the rate increase and everything that we had through the last year. Lease revenue is up 22.48 per trip. That's almost 11% increase on the per trip revenue just for leases. Overall, the trips for the year are almost equal to last year. As you can see that we had a decline since April for each month. The year-to-date comparison, trips, employee trips, 800,000 to 22's 950,000 is down that 15%. Revenue is down overall for the year. The average trip is up. Medallions are still the same. Lease trips have increased by 11%. Lease revenue is up almost 23%. The per trip revenue on leases is up almost 11%, and there's been an increase of lease decals of almost 19%.
Does that indicate that we're moving more people towards a lease model, or just that they're being more productive? I don't know. You may not be able to tell.
Yeah, no, there has been an increase in decals. One of the companies has started leasing. YCS parent group is starting to increase their leasing. Medallions are the same, as you can see in the breakdown of the lease medallions. The increase in those from the companies. And then onto the disabled and elderly rides requested is an increase in numbers there for over last month. And then the credit card transactions are way up as well, almost 21%.
Curtis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For a question. On the, I can't remember, so I'm wondering if you know, on the disabled and elderly rides, the money that's allocated to EHHS that goes unused gets reverted back into your reserve, correct? Or do they keep it?
I do not believe so.
So
I
they
believe
keep it?
yeah, it is just, we just give them the money and then they get to use it as they see fit. And we don't have any real say in how they use it and no, they don't send us any unused portions.
All right, thanks.
Onto the agency stats, you can see on the investigations, there was only 37 citations written for the month. As Todd explained, there was no impounds or anything for the month of October. In court, there was 32 violations resolved. 1 failed to appear in court. 29 were waived before hearings. There were 9 hearings held with 3 guilty verdicts, 2 denials, 1 revocation, 2 dismissed, and 1 failed to appear. There was 3 citations dismissed and 2 denied. The next one, the dispatcher events, is a newer style report that I'm going to start using to better show what dispatch goes through, all the calls, all the events that we have. It's a 2-page report, and you can see that it starts off with the initial call, and then it gives the resolution of the final event of what it turned into. So you can see that there's all the different complaints and what the different types of complaints there were. I think this is a better overall look at what events are coming into the agency to give you guys a better view of the resolution of everything that dispatch goes through. And you can see for the month on the second page that there were 859 events for the month. And the next page shows the list of different citations that were written. And then the monthly vehicle report of the different OSNs or out of service notices, the 24 hours, that were issued, along with the accidents, annual inspections, meter seals, and how many new cabs were put in for the month. And then the last page is how many cabs are currently in service. That have been approved for use as a cab. If there's any other information that you would like to, I'm trying to improve our reporting. New things that I'm looking at to try and improve. If there's anything that you guys are interested in knowing, please let me know. And I can create reports to better track these. Like Todd had mentioned, we did make a way to capture F1 complaints that we have and stuff. So hopefully we don't see a lot, but we should be able to track what we do see coming in. That's it. Any questions?
On cabs and service,
Mm-hmm.
it would be interesting to know what the increase is in the future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's up 3%, it's up
Right.
1%.
Okay.
How many vehicles are, because I know historically, the last few years, there's been a lot of difficulty in getting new vehicles for the industry. So it'd be nice to see how that struggle is turning. Anyway, probably not, but anything else?
I do have one question. It's probably for the acting administrator. If I remember right, former administrator was changing the accident response policies to be officer response to any accident. Is that what I remember him saying in the last meeting? Is that something that you intend on continuing, or is that something you haven't gotten to yet? Because I would submit that the way it worked before with dispatch handling the minor fender benders and not requiring everybody to wait on the curb for an officer to be dispatched was probably more effective. Just my opinion.
And I agree with you. I don't think that, I think they're called bumper taps, which is a new term for me, but I don't see, if there's no damage, why we would need to go to those when I think dispatch could probably take care of all the information that's needed, and we wouldn't have to tie up an investigator for that.
I love the new format, dispatch events, but if looking at the 295 accidents that come into the agency, I'm not sure that they're staffed to send people. Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that I concur. It's, I think, a cost benefit analysis of an exposure from the sense of if there was injury or whatever. Right. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I have, I guess, a question or request. I really hadn't focused on money being transferred from this agency to DHHS. And Curtis gave us the answer that we just give them the money and they use it as they see fit. That seems odd to me. Typically, there has to be a legislative purpose for any money spent by any agency. So if we're just giving them too much money and they're just pocketing it for whatever they do, and I'm sure they're worthy purposes, I guess I'd like to know at a subsequent meeting, what does the law say? What are we doing? And if there's a difference there, we might want to get with the new director of BNI and see what we can do about it. But one agency is not supposed to be subsidizing another. We're supposed to be paying for these rides. If we're supposed to give them less because it's not being used, clearly they don't, from what I understand, they don't have the ability to contract or expand that. If we're just giving a flat amount and it's really more than needs to be done, that's money we can use for our enforcement purposes. Not that I begrudge them having extra money. I know they do good work there, but there typically has always been that you can only spend certain dollars for legislatively articulated purposes. And the only organization that can change that is the legislature. So I think we need to take a look at that and make sure we're doing that according to Hoyle. Okay.
Anything else? Great, thank you.
Sergeant Scott, you ready?
I'm ready.
Good morning, members, public, industry. I'm Sergeant Scott. It's nice to be back. A little hiatus. If we can get my presentation pulled up. I think we got screen square on the back this time, so you don't have to turn around, hopefully. At least you have it in front of you. You get the hard copy and make it a little bit easier. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about what enforcement does, and go through some of the aspects that makes us us. And I have my support from my fellow sergeants here too. All right, next slide, please. All right, so again, purpose to let you know about what we do as Compliance Enforcement Division of the Taxicab Authority. Slide. And all of it boils down to our mission statement. So the mission of the Taxicab Authority is to provide for the safety, comfort, and convenience of the taxi riding public through the regulation of the industry. Compliance enforcement is made up of sworn peace officers. We monitor compliance and enforce taxi-related violations. Investigations are initiated during proactive patrol and inspection activities or through various complaints, audits, and contacts from other enforcement agencies. Right now, our current composition, we have 15 positions. There might be a little bit of a change with that. The chief position was unclassified, moved to a deputy administrator. Still be a post position for now, but not necessarily in enforcement. I'm happy to say that we have all of our positions filled right now. So we have 0 vacancies in enforcement. We are requesting for additional bodies for enforcement, though. Based off of what we've heard so far, sounds like we're good to go with 4 more positions. That's going to help combat some of the issues we've been having. Number of drivers, number of medallions that are available, and number of rides that are happening in Vegas. So we've seen a little bit of a drop from last year as far as rides, but there's still overall more than what we had years ago. Slide. Currently, right now, we have 3 sergeants, myself, Sergeant Cigaroa, Sergeant Bennett, each run a shift, and they're modified shifts to try and cover as much as we can with our individual squads. Put on there the 4 possible vacancies. There could be a little bit of changes to our organization chart, especially with our new interim administrator. So we have a little bit different purpose and direction with that. Slide. Main functions that we have in enforcement would be patrol and responding to calls. And I'll go through each of these: the investigations and complaints, and then the unlawful passenger transportation, UPTs as we call them. Slide. Patrol, its purpose is to detect violations of state and federal laws, rules, and regulations. Enforcement actions involve verbal or written warnings, issuing citations, arrest, mechanical repair orders, and replacing vehicles out of service pending repairs. Enforcement action is determined at the investigator's discretion, consistent with appropriate laws, rules, regulations, policy, and procedure. Investigators are responsible for all of Clark County, so we do make an effort to get down to Laughlin, out to Mesquite, whatever, we receive those complaints, we'll try and get out there as well. Slide. The investigations complaints, we get the email complaints and phone complaints. They come in, and I'm lucky to have a dispatch supervisor that provides me all that information, logs it, creates a case for us. And we go through, we receive and review those formal complaints, make any determinations regarding possible regulatory violations, criminal activity, and jurisdiction with our specific program area. We gather and analyze the background information and facts pertaining to those complaints. Additionally, we conduct interviews with complainants, witnesses, employers, suspects, state and local government agencies, and other sources to obtain information regarding violations of noncompliance. We develop those leads and facts pertaining to the case to prove a violation or criminal activity exists. UPTs are unlawful passenger transportation. NRS is pretty obvious in what we must do. Upon enforcement, all violators shall be contacted under NRS 706-88395, and their vehicle must be impounded pursuant to that NRS. Okay, so there's no discretion on that. I mean, must is must, right? The elements for that would be point-to-point transportation or interstate transportation in Clark County, Nevada, for an exchange of money, goods, or services. We've actually seen a lot more increase in the Craigslist ads where people are soliciting for sex favors in exchange for rides. So that's something that we've been working on with Metro, and we've been doing with ourselves as well, investigating those crimes. Additionally, as far as an element, they cannot have a CPCN, certificate of public convenience and necessity, no taximeter or taxi medallion, and then operating without using the TNC company or Transportation Network Company application. Those are the elements that we need to make sure that they are actually a UPT. We have several different sources of activity for UPTs to check. It's advertisements, Facebook, Craigslist, all those different online services. Sometimes from patrol, we have observed suspicious activity during routine patrol, a targeted enforcement activity. I know a lot of times on swing shifts, we try to go to those high traffic areas where we're seeing like Uber and Lyft picking up a lot of pedestrian and tourist traffic. Sometimes we get the referrals from other law enforcement agencies. Sometimes the airport is letting us know what's going on. Then also citizen complaints. One thing that we need to work on a little bit better is getting the assistance from the taxi industry, from some of the drivers about letting us know where they're seeing these issues. I'd like to see us do a better job of working with the taxi drivers and getting some of those UPTs taken care of. Slide. It's an example of an advertisement. You know, it's pretty typical. This is a Craigslist ad, and this is what we look at. And we do a sting operation where we go and we play the ruse like we need a ride, you know, and I think our cops are pretty good at playing dumb sometimes, and it's great. So slide. Some special events that we work on, and it's been a planning process and a lot of bumps and bruises. EDC, I know it has its issues about getting taxi traffic in and out just because of deadheading from the valley out to EDC, out of the speedway, not making money on that trip out there and having to, you know, fight their way through traffic. That's something that I think if we start on earlier, maybe we can come up with a better plan to help deal with the traffic plan, especially for egress after EDC is complete. That's always the biggest issue for us. I know we've done a lot of UPTs at EDC, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We want to maintain a balance where we're able to allow people to leave EDC and not jam them up so much by just stopping cars all the time and impounding their vehicles. So it's kind of that fine balance that we have to maintain. NFR, we always have a big presence there. We're always helping out with traffic and then doing some UPTs as well. So we always go to those meetings over at Thomas and Mack with UNLV. Grand Prix, we all know it's been rough. And it's kind of been their way. Not a lot of input from us. I've attended the meetings for the last year now, with the exception of the last couple of months. But we'll hopefully work through it, and year after year, hopefully get better and become more effective at what we do for the taxi industry and the transportation of Clark County. And then 2024 Super Bowl, it's coming. It'll be quick. I know we've been doing meetings now for quite a while too. I know everyone has these big binders talking about the different plans. Allegion's been fairly open with what they want, what we can do to help them out, as well as the other agencies, whether it's Pat G and whatnot. So, slide. Statistics so far for 2023: citations written 683, verbal warnings 415, arrests 18, UPTs 30, targeted enforcement 307. And I know we already talked about stats. You know, UPTs clearly down from the standards that we had before. I know my first year running the squad, we had 102 UPTs that we impounded. That was due to, you know, mostly enforcement, really doing a good job out of EDC. 23 impounds in 3 days. So that was something that kind of ballooned some of the numbers. Verbal warnings, I think overall have increased a little bit just based off of philosophy and investigators understanding kind of their role. It's not always about being a hammer out there, and sometimes it's just helping people out. Slide. Some of our problem areas that we see in enforcement would be rotation violations. We see a lot of the same people doing the same thing. It's where they skip the taxi line and go ahead, they drop off and then pick up right away without going back through the rotation. And for me, I think you're cheating other drivers when that happens. So just be fair, and like to see it be fair amongst all the drivers. That way everyone has the same opportunity to make money. Biggest area that we see that would be at the airport, where if somebody drops off at T1 departures and then picks up a fare right there, as opposed to going back through the line in the rotation. So that's always an issue that we have with that. So ride refusals, I understand driving from, you know, Caesars to Bellagio is not a moneymaker, but when somebody requests that ride, they have to give it. You can't refuse an orderly person that taxi ride. It must be done. And then the taxi assistance program. Every single month, I get phone calls from people from ADSD, Aging Disability Services Division, letting me know that seniors are calling in saying they can't get rides, and that they're returning their coupon books for refunds. So I don't know where that money is going, whether it's going back to ADSD, but that's been an issue that I get calls every single week about not getting their vouchers redeemed, saying that some cab companies or cab drivers are refusing to take the vouchers at all. So that's something that needs to be addressed as well. Slide, please. So in industry enforcement, ideally, again, investigators are not intended to be a hammer out there. We need to be working with the taxi industry, make sure that we're doing everything that we can to build the industry up. Investigators need to work with taxi drivers and the industry to build rapport. Even though we do have some limited resources and personnel, we do strive to handle as many calls as possible. Realistically, the TA inspectors, the TA dispatch, they're invaluable to what enforcement does. They handle a lot of the calls and the accidents that we don't always have the time to do. Again, we need the cooperation from drivers, the industry, and other agencies to fulfill our mission. But some of my goals, enforcement goals, all parties working together in concert to achieve the common goal. Again, we want people to travel safely. We want the industry to thrive, and that's something we're looking for. Individually for enforcement, I'd like to see us increase our efficiency and effectiveness through directed patrols and how we operate. With the resources that we have to be smart about how we do things, whether it's scheduling, equipment, however it is, technology, and different capabilities. So if we have to increase our training capabilities and technological advancements, whatever we have to do to become more effective and efficient. The next piece would be proper planning before large events to ensure smooth operations. I'd like to see more of the industry be involved earlier on in the planning process, so they're not finding out last minute that, oh, wait, this is the direction you have to go. This is your only location. I'd like to see the industry have input on where they think that the best staging locations would be for themselves, and maybe even have a fighting chance against the TNCs. So, any questions about any of that? I know I kind of whipped through it pretty quick.
No, I have one comment though for industry, but more for the driver union, which I don't know if they're here, maybe on the phone. But you guys basically have a 40% verbal warning rate. I don't think anybody's going to accuse you guys of being heavy-handed. So I just want to point that out to industry and the drivers union, that clearly you guys are trying to work with the drivers you see on the street. I can tell you that myself and my agency, we drive patrol cars, we write citations for traffic violations. You guys are very generous.
It's got to be a relationship. We need to work with them too. So we understand that.
I think there's a fine balance between the compliance and the enforcement side, and even in our title. So, yeah, we need to have that correct balance. Sometimes it's difficult, but as you guys can see, I am going to involve my sergeants a lot more, empower them to do things like this, and meeting with the industry. We had a meeting yesterday. We're going to talk. We're going to be sending the sergeants out to a lot more of these meetings and things like that. So we want to get our exposure out there and get our reputation in really good standards.
Then the only other question I have, and this might go back to the radio issue, are you going to be on DPS channels, or are you still going to have your own channels?
We're still going to have our.
Okay, we'll just be able to access that.
Yeah, I think we're talking about, well, I think we're going to have the same talk groups that we have right now.
Gotcha. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
What's the difference between audits and investigation?
Audits and investigations. I mean, we haven't done audits through like financials. That's part of it, what we do. We had management analysts kind of working with that before. It's something we're working on, looking at some of the financial records as part of the audits, make sure they verify the information matches what it needs to, as far as what's being reported and what we actually see on books. Investigations can, and then that can lead into an investigation if the audits don't match.
And that's something that I want to bring back as soon as we can get up to staff. I think those audits are very important. I think it's a good time for our agency to commingle with the industry and talk about issues. And obviously there can be some enforcement that comes out of those audits, but I think it's a very good time for compliance. So I want to get that back as soon as we can.
I have a question. On the slide, compliance enforcement main function, patrol, response to calls, investigations, complaints, and lawful. Is there any percentage of your time that you can guesstimate?
I could probably estimate, but it would be very accurate. I'd say that probably 60% of it is towards the 60%, 60 would be towards the patrol and response to calls.
Okay.
And then after that, kind of a breakdown into the UPTs and investigations.
Would the remaining 40% be equal between investigations?
Fairly equal, yes. And we're trying to work towards a better balance between all three of those.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I did have a question. I apologize.
No, no problem. That was fine time for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. If you could look at the organizational chart, just out of curiosity, you have a compliance enforcement investigator 3 that is not on any one of these teams. Is that like a float or are they just special duties?
It's a new change that we've had. That person used to only report to the administrator at the time, and we've since changed that. So now that lead investigator reports to me.
Okay. And then underneath that, there's a box that's black writing and extremely dark. I think that's a vacant position. I don't see a name there. You barely see the compliance investigator 2. I think that is.
That is a occupied position. The person is not admin.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, Scott, just to clarify, so the position, the DS fills, that is actually in a new org chart in a different place under your section?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
As of yesterday.
As of yesterday, gotcha, perfect.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Parks, that presentation. Or anything else? Bear with me. Our legal counsel have anything we need to know? Okay, great. I did want to say on the legal report, thanks to Commissioner Gruber and the folks at TA or the MTA for helping us out in the hearing officer area so that we can get that process back up and running. So that's a big help. And I know we owe you now. Anything else on stats? If not, are there any future agenda items?
The only thing is we'll deal with F1 at the next meeting. We'll go over the F1 surcharge.
Statistics, right? Yeah. I was going to say that. Also, I think Vice Chair Soderberg's point, it would be helpful if we could find out what's going on with the
DHS.
Yeah. In two respects. One, obviously, we don't get to create a slush fund for them. And I doubt that's what's going on because some legislative audit would pick that up. But what I'm actually interested in, I'm personally interested in, is the calls that Sergeant Scott was talking about, where we're not we're not able to service those, or actually drivers are refusing the vouchers, and need to kind of understand why, if there's a financial reason for that, or it's just, I don't want to drive out to the suburbs. As you and I have spoken, we're going to have to ultimately address some probably rate making. That's just my thought, rate making mechanism to get cabs into the neighborhoods. So we ought to start gathering information to help us understand what our options might be. Because we need to be servicing the whole valley, not just the strip. So
And to send you down the right path, I do remember from my time as the interim administrator that it is a budgeted item. So it's a line item in the budget that's legislatively approved. The mechanism for it being a one-time, fund and being kept by Aging and Disability Services. I can never remember the acronym. I think the industry pays a surcharge. I think it's funded by the industry and it's passed through for the agency. And if I remember right, the problems that they were having we're related to getting the cabs out in the suburbs, having to make sure that send handicap cabs specifically sometimes, and then the drivers having to operate those and that kind of thing.
I think there's a lot of logistical problems or issues, not problems, but issues and challenges. Anything else on agenda item 5? Hearing none, that will take us to agenda item 6, which is our second public comment session. This matters on our agenda to receive, the board receive comments from the public. Not from the, from the public on matters within our jurisdictions. We can't take any action, but we welcome any comments or suggestions.
Good morning again. George Balaban from Desert Cab. I wanted just what had came up in this conversation. I want to address a couple of them. On the senior rides, the vouchers that are turned in to our drivers are handled just like cash. So I can't speak for the entire industry, but there aren't drivers not taking the vouchers. They're not refusing the vouchers because it's just like money. So servicing that ride, that has been the issues, the challenge of that. The majority of the time when somebody is being sent to a radio call, they don't know if they're going to get paid with a senior ride or money. So that they're not turning it down because of that. It's just servicing it. Having the number of taxi cabs, like you said, service the neighborhoods. So that would be, in my opinion, why that would be happening, not the actual voucher. The second thing that came up was the idea about the lease, seeing more leases versus employees. The leasing, just from the driver's point of view, leaving in the employee status, you lose your health insurance and some of those things, but the flexibility of being able to lease the cab is that flexibility is just a really big thing. So it's very popular. The problems are on our side from the company is that you lose the car to somebody who's going to lease it, and they're only going to drive it half of the day. So you've got an asset that is sitting in his driveway because he can't drive it 24 hours a day. And not only did you lose the asset, unless you make him bring the medallion back, which he wouldn't lease the car from you if he did, because he'd have to come get the medallion again. You lose that flexibility. You also have a medallion that is sitting in his driveway 12 hours a day. So you've lost the use of the asset and the medallion. So from the company side, ideally, you don't want to lease unless you just had unlimited number of medallions, where it didn't matter to you, and unlimited number of cars, those you'd have to buy. So it's a kind of a challenge, but I think that the option to lease, there's a demand out there for that. So I think that will continue to grow just purely because of the flexibility to allow them to work when it's busy and whatever days they want to drive. So I think that's why you're seeing that happen. It's been slow because there's been some companies that don't want to do what I just said, which is they lose the asset with the medallion.
Before you leave, I have a question. So 2 issues I heard: number of medallions, number of vehicles. One of those levers we could change, the medallion.
Correct.
But would it appreciably change because you can't buy enough cars?
Well,
I mean,
I think that is slowly changing. In our operation, when cars become available, if you're running a good fleet, you would try to have every one of your cars the same. That's not what I do. I have 19 different models. So as cars become available, you're buying onesies and twosies. So I can fill my fleet, but it makes it maintenance harder. You have to have better trained mechanics working all different kinds of cars so we can get the vehicles. But even if you can get them, still, a car now is $35,000 to $40,000. So to have that asset that that's sitting in the guy's driveway, you kind of have to figure that. But from where I sit, I kind of look and think, well, I'm going to get brand new cars. I'm going to run them in my employee fleet, double shifting them. And as they start to get a little bit of age on them, and I don't want to put on as many miles, I can put them into the lease fleet. So, there's ways to get around it. So, yeah, I think that the availability of vehicles is going to become easier. The price of vehicles is not becoming easier. That's kind of an issue, but the medallion part for sure, whether we, we've talked about this virtual medallion, some way to be able to identify through the TA that that car has a medallion on it. And then when he parks it, I can virtually take it and put it on another car. We're not there yet, but we're working with Captain about having something like that that would allow us to do that. So.
Any other? Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to address us in person? Is there any member of the public participating remotely that would like to address us? Seeing none, I'll close agenda item 6, and that takes us to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Then moved and seconded by Vice Chair Soderberg and Becker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.